In the early 1600s, the Netherlands was the wealthiest and most innovative nation in Europe. Dutch ships ruled the seas, carrying spices, silk, and porcelain from the East Indies. Dutch cities buzzed with merchants, bankers, artists, and traders, and a new kind of wealth was emerging, one built not just on land and titles, but on commerce and speculation. And then came the tulip. A flower that today we see in spring gardens or on postcards became for a brief and strange moment the center of an economic frenzy so wild that it is still remembered as the world's first financial bubble. This is the story of Tulip Mania, how it started, why it spiraled out of control, and how it all came crashing down. Tulips were not native to the Netherlands. They originally came from the Ottoman Empire and arrived in Western Europe in the mid-1500s. To the Dutch, tulips were something extraordinary, brilliantly colored, with bold shapes unlike the soft local flowers. Botanists, gardeners, and collectors were fascinated. Tulips became a symbol of wealth and taste, the kind of thing a rich merchant would display in his garden or have painted into a still life. But it wasn't just the flower itself. It was certain types of tulips that caused a sensation. Some tulips developed rare, spectacular patterns, streaks and flames of color across their petals. These were caused by a virus that affected the bulb. But to buyers, these broken tulips were seen as priceless treasures, each unique, each irreplaceable. By the 1620s and 1630s, the tulip craze had moved beyond botany and beauty. A market had developed. Bulbs were bought, sold, and crucially speculated on. Merchants, craftsmen, and even farmers got involved, many hoping to flip a bulb for a profit. Prices climbed. A rare bulb might sell for the equivalent of thousands of guilders, enough to buy a house in central Amsterdam. Importantly, the buying and selling didn't always involve the actual bulbs. Much of it was based on futures contracts, promises to pay a certain price for a bulb at a later date, when it was lifted from the ground. This meant people were betting on the future value of tulips they didn't yet own. By the winter of 1636 to 1637, things had reached a fever pitch. Ordinary people, not just wealthy merchants, were involved. Tulip trading took place not only in official markets, but also in taverns and back rooms. Stories, some exaggerated over time, tell of a sailor mistakenly eating a valuable tulip bulb, thinking it was an onion, a snack worth more than a year's wages. There were reports of artisans selling everything they owned just to get into the market. A famous bulb like the Semper Augustus could fetch a staggering price, sometimes compared to the cost of a mansion in Amsterdam. For a few months, it seemed like tulips were a magical ticket to fortune. But bubbles, by their nature, are fragile. In February 1637, demand suddenly faltered. Some buyers refused to pay the insane prices they had promised. Auctions failed. Panic spread. People realized they were holding contracts for flowers that were now worth only a fraction of what they had bet on. Within days, prices collapsed. Merchants were ruined. Speculators lost their savings. Families that had staked everything on the tulip trade found themselves bankrupt. Taverns that had been filled with eager tulip traders went silent. The tulip, once the jewel of Dutch society, became a symbol of greed and foolishness. Interestingly, Tulip Mania didn't cause a national depression or widespread social collapse. The broader Dutch economy was strong, and many of the biggest players were able to weather the storm. But its cultural impact was huge. Dutch writers and painters mocked the frenzy. Moralists used it as a lesson about vanity and human weakness. Over time, Tulip Mania became a cautionary tale, a symbol of economic bubbles, where irrational excitement pushes prices far beyond reality. Why did Tulip Mania happen? Historians still debate it. Was it pure greed? Social pressure? A misunderstanding of supply and rarity? Probably a mix of all these things. But what's certain is that the pattern of boom, speculation, and collapse has repeated many times since, from the South Sea bubble of the 1700s to the dot-com bubble of the early 2000s to cryptocurrency surges today. Tulip Mania teaches us that people, in every age, can be swept up in the dream of easy riches. And often, by the time they realize the truth, the bubble has already burst. Today, the Netherlands still loves tulips. Every spring, fields bloom in waves of color, and tourists flock to see them. But few who admire these flowers in a vase or garden realize they were once at the heart of one of history's strangest and most famous economic frenzies. Tulip Mania reminds us, behind every bubble, there's a story of beauty, of hope, of risk, and in the end, of the sobering return to reality.